Money has a way of bringing up so much more than numbers: guilt, overwhelm, second guessing, and a quiet sense that the way we've been taught to approach money doesn't quite fit. In this conversation, we'll explore how sensitivity and intuition shape our relationship with money, why slowing down matters, and what becomes possible when we stop forcing ourselves to make decisions from our heads alone. This is an invitation to build self-trust, reduce friction, and begin relating to money in a way that feels more aligned, supportive, and true to who you are. Hey lady, welcome to the Highly Sensitive Woman podcast. Do you struggle with self-doubt, setting boundaries, or feeling overwhelmed? My name is Alyssa, and I'm a highly sensitive woman who spent years trying to fit in, ignoring my own needs, and living in constant fear of disappointing others. But I finally discovered the power of embracing who I am, and now I don't feel so broken. In this podcast, you'll learn to find your voice, set boundaries, and live with bold confidence and inner peace. Grab a cozy blanket. It's time to connect with someone just like you. Welcome to the Highly Sensitive Woman. Today's guest is a dear friend of mine, the host of Your Money, Your Rules podcast, and understands the challenges and beauty of being a highly sensitive woman because she is one. Welcome, Erin Gray.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, I am excited to have this conversation, and I am thrilled for you to share all of your wisdom about money and all things finances. But before we kind of dive into navigating the world of finances and how our sensitivities definitely play a role, I want you to share just a little bit about your personal journey of understanding and accepting being a highly sensitive woman.
Hmm. Gosh, I'm always like, where did the journey start? Way probably before I landed on this earth, right? But I think for a long time, I probably wouldn't have used those words because probably growing up, I was always told I was too sensitive. And so I probably unknowingly, right, subconsciously, um, what I always call it is like disconnected. I know we're all, our bodies and our head are all the same, but like I disconnected from my body and just stayed in my head, because for several reasons. It felt like too much. I didn't have these, I didn't have this language, right? But where I am now, the language I would use for how I was feeling back then would be it was too much. It was feeling a lot of other people's energy. I didn't know how to navigate it. And yeah, too sensitive, all of the things. And so I really, as a coping mechanism, you know, kind of got more a hardened heart, if you want to call it that, because that was my way to protect my such sensitive beingness. And now I have come into that and recognized like that is one of my superpowers. I am able to sense energy. And yes, I am too, whatever too air quoting, right? Too sensitive is. Yes, because we are all sensing beings. And what that really means is other people just don't know how to sense yet. But it's not a fault. It's not a bad thing. And so when I really started to kind of go inward and allow myself to question, like, where did this come from? Why do I feel bad about this? What, all of these things, I really got to see, like, this is a beautiful thing that like I'm able to serve clients at such a deep level because I can read body language, I could sense energy. And also, I also want to, I don't necessarily like the word protect, but just honor my energy as well. And so giving myself time to recharge and to be by myself and to be in nature and to honor myself first and then show up for everyone else has definitely been a journey, not something that happens overnight, and definitely feels like one step forward, two step backwards, two step forwards, one step backwards, a roundabout, a comeback, all the things. So yeah, I think that also the world does not yet value being sensitive.
Oh man, all of that landed so accurately for me as well. And so much of my experience One of the things that you mentioned was being able to like pick up on energy shifts. And recently I had a session with one of my clients, and I just said to her, I feel like there was a shift in energy. Do you feel that too? And she said she did. And then we talked a little bit about it and moved on. And then it was in our next session when she said, tell me a little bit more about that because I'm so glad that you asked. I didn't even realize that there was a shift in energy until you pointed it out. And then as soon as you did, I was like, yeah, that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a beautiful thing. And it can also be a little bit jarring to go through the world and always being able to kind of pick up on shifts in energy with all of the people and experiences of our lives.
Yeah. And also recognizing I'm highly sensitive to sounds like tonal, um, just elevation of voices. And maybe that was like, I think I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. She was like, maybe that is another one of your superpowers. Because I hear my intuition in my right ear. But growing up, my parents fought a lot. And so it's almost like this protective mechanism, maybe that I also had of like, it like the loudness is too much because this is so sensitive for me and I can pick up on all of that. So, being in like I won't eat in restaurants that are super loud. Like I feel agitation in my body, and just honoring things like that. Like my husband is very boisterous and we all are in our family, but like sometimes I'm like, hey, right here, you don't have to yell at me, but it feels like yelling because that tone gets so loud. And probably if you think about decibels, it's probably not that high in decibels, but to me in my body, it feels that way.
I do know for sure. Speaking of restaurants, I was at one last night and I was getting very overstimulated and I was having a conversation with my partner and I said, I'm going to need to take a minute. I feel some tears coming up and I just need to go regroup. So I went to the restroom and I took like 2 minutes and regrouped and
Yeah.
kind of helped calm all of that. I mean, the place was still very overstimulating, don't get me wrong, but I was able to kind of regulate and enjoy the rest of dinner. So,
Yeah.
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 And it's so fascinating to me too, like how in tune we were as children and didn't even realize it and kind of dismissed it, or we just kind of went through life thinking this is how it is. And then now, as we have become adults and now have the language and the understanding that we have, we look back and we're like, wow, I was so intuitive as a child and knew exactly what I needed.
Yeah, we get conditioned out of it, right? Because for most of us, we are raised or were raised by parents who were not, we're all intuitive, right? Like we all come from source, we all come from um, you know, divine being. And so that our intuition is our connection. I believe our intuition is our connection to the divine. And so when we have parents that raise us that have been disconnected, and or maybe you're raised by grandparents, whoever it is, your caretaker, like we've this whole patterning or generations and generations of they've had to disconnect, right? They were intuitive and that had to get cut off because they're parents. And so just when I started to also look at it from that frame, like they're not doing it on purpose, they're not doing it to me. Everyone is just trying to compensate for what has been, air quotes, their normal. And normal actually isn't to disregard it and to not feel, and to not be sensitive and highly sensitive. It is actually to feel and to sense things.
Yes. And learning how to feel and sense things and not get overwhelmed by that
Yeah.
has definitely been a process and all of the ups and downs and back and forth that you described earlier. But what I have found is the level of acceptance that I have of that now and learning how to live more in alignment and integrity and following my intuition. It's just a much more peaceful way to live. Not to say that there aren't things that aren't peaceful, because there certainly are, but in general, it's a much more peaceful way to live.
Yeah. I always say like with less friction, right? Like I think when people, hear words like, oh, it's easier, it's more easeful, it's like it's not without, it's just it's less of it. And it is a when I say faster, I just mean like it's an easier way from point A to point B because you're following your intuition, like I said. And I was just telling this to someone the other day, when she was thinking about working with me. And I said, when you follow your intuition, you're able to make decisions that your logical, linear mind cannot even come up with. And so it's like we get to just hop, skip, and jump versus try to think it. And I had to build like an evidence list for my intuition. That's where I had to start of like, oh, look at all the times when I followed my intuition. Look how well it worked out. And when I didn't follow my intuition, I always believe everything still works out and there's lots of lessons, but there was definitely more friction there.
Yes, I love that description, and I am always looking for evidence. So I know all about that and helping with making decisions. And so coming at it from a financial perspective and making financial decisions, we care so deeply about doing things that are in alignment and with integrity. How how can women, and specifically highly sensitive women, kind of tap into that when they're thinking about their investing or their spending and making sure that they are reflecting what they really value without feeling guilty for
What they want.
wanting or abundance or any of the other things that can cause guilt, especially
Yeah.
around the topic of money?
Yeah. I think guilt is such a fascinating emotion because anything in my body and what I teach clients too is like anything that feels those what I would call lower vibration emotions. Like there's no emotion that is good or bad, but we want to label it that way. But a lower frequency vibration isn't truth, isn't really what our soul, our desires are. Right. And a lot of us are in the habit of feeling those lower vibration emotions on a more consistent basis. So anytime that we try to, if you want to call it tap out of that or get out of that, then I don't know if your listeners have heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza, but he talks about this in the sense of like our bodies swim in these, let's just call them chemicals or things of this sort, and these emotions. And so when our body is used to feeling guilt and we haven't felt it in a while, then our body will serve up a thought and or that feeling again, because that is what is familiar in the body. But that doesn't mean that that's what our natural state is. It's just familiar. And so when you're making decisions, you have to, I think, what helps first is getting in your own auric space. So maybe that is like getting in nature, just being by yourself. So often, I think the world has conditioned us to make decisions quickly, right now, in front of someone. Like, think about car sales or even with coaching. Sometimes it's like, okay, it's like, no, I want to go and I want to ponder my decision and be with myself. You know, Making a home decision, just all of these decisions that we're expected to make with that person right then and there. And so I would say, first and foremost, get in your own energy, be by yourself. Make sure that your nervous system is regulated and that you're really able to tap into your intuition and it's not coming from that fear-based place. And then second is, do I actually want this? Like, what would I love? Like, that's a question I'd love to ask myself, because when I ask that question, I really get to see what is my heart's desire versus what is my head thinking. And then I bring in okay, so if you are feeling guilt, is this because this is what someone has taught me that I shouldn't do? Is this because of, societal or cultural, constructs that we have that you shouldn't want more or you shouldn't, desire more? So really starting to kind of pick apart, and that takes slowing down. That takes being by yourself. That takes allowing yourself the time and the space to feel into what is it that you want. And we are definitely a world of, let me tell you what you want, not let you figure out what you want.
Yes. For a very long time, didn't even realize how many decisions I was making thinking that it was something that I wanted that I didn't actually want. I had just kind of become, I don't know if conditioned is the right thing, but I had just allowed my brain to always defer to other people
Yeah.
and the messaging that they were giving, and didn't even know what it was that I wanted actually. Like, did I want
Yeah.
that for myself, or did I want that just because I thought somebody else wanted that for me, and so thus I wanted it as well. It was such a
Hmm.
weird thing to start unpacking that and learning how to really trust myself. And
Yeah.
with financial decisions, especially, that has been a struggle because it was not until shortly before turning 40 that for the first time I lived completely on my own, not with my parents, not with a roommate, not with my ex-husband. And I was like solely responsible for all things financial. So from that place of like building self-trust, what are some tips that you would have for the listener, especially with the financial space?
Yeah. I think let's start before financial. Let's just start where you already do trust yourself in other areas of your life. So you might be focusing on where you don't with financial, but there are like, do you trust yourself to get up in the morning and brush your teeth and get ready for work or whatever it might be. So just notice where you are already doing or you are already trusting yourself. And what I love about that is if we're doing it in one area of our life, then we know we can just transfer it over to another area of our life. And focusing on, really keeping your word to yourself and starting, I always say start small. Like I think when I started this journey, I was like, okay, I'm going to do all the things. It's like, whoa, like why don't you just, if you say you're going to, first of all, focusing like where you already do say what you're going to do, right? Building up that evidence. And then if it's small, like, okay, if you say you're going to, I'm trying to think of something like I've typically been a workout person, but let's say for me, it was like sitting down with our money on a consistent basis. It's like, okay, I'm just going to do one time a week, or I'm just going to do one time, like whatever it is, right? Like, so just something that is 10 minutes or just something small so that you can build up what I call like the reps that you can get into and you can build up that evidence of like, look when I say I do something, I do it and I stick to it. And I think it is also a perfect because here we can go into guilt and shame when we don't do it. And instead of doing that, instead of choosing those emotions, choose curiosity instead. What was I feeling? Was I feeling overwhelmed? Did I actually schedule that on a time that I actually don't feel the best to do that? Like, I don't like to do our books in the morning time. I like to do it more in the afternoon. So it's like, why am I continuing to schedule it in the morning when Erin, you don't like to do that? So really start to question and get curious, like what is the supportive and I don't want to place everything on externally, but like what are supportive environments? What are supportive times? What are the things that I can do to support yourself? Like you have to think of yourself as your best friend. So how would you support yourself, in doing some of these new activities to build the self-trust?
I love that you gave the example of, do I trust myself to get up in the morning and brush my teeth? Right? Like, I think so many times we think that it has to be this very big, grand gesture as a piece of evidence. And when we start looking, we probably have hundreds of them throughout the day, and that we can lean into and have as evidence that we can trust ourselves and we can just build on those. And also, I can very much relate to setting myself up for success and not trying to force myself into a day, a time, an environment that I know is not going to be beneficial for me. And yet, for whatever reason, I feel like that's what I quote unquote should do, and that's how it should look.
Yes. You said, let me think about what you said about the brushing your teeth. Oh, the micro, like the 1%. Like I always use that. It's like, what is just 1%? Here you go back to the world. Like we we want a quantum leap and we want to do these big jumps, but it's like, what actual like the best thing for nervous system, the best thing for is consistency, is slow. I don't want to say slow and steady, but just that little like picking away or continuing to do something over and over and over again. And it's 1%. It's like, if you really think about it from an energetic standpoint, 0 to 1% is everything. because you were literally, I know everything is in motion, but like something from nothing, nothing coming from nothing and then creating something, that's everything. 1 to the 100%, you're already in the motion, And so really focusing on what is that just 1% that I could do? Is it, you know, 10 minutes, that is going to make a difference? Is it just opening up my bank account every single day, but not doing anything else yet? Like, what are those little tiny micro moments that you can do on a consistent basis versus, I had a client one time, she would like not do anything in her books for like weeks or months. And then she would like try to marathon a Saturday. And I'm like, why in the world would you do like you hours? Like that doesn't feel like fun at all. And so you have dread already and you have all of this overwhelm and loomingness versus what if you just looked at it 10 minutes once a week and you just did that? And then here's the other thing that you get the dopamine hit. Like we have to think of ourselves or our brains as little toddlers, and we need a sticker. And we need a lot of stickers, And so when we do that and we have evidence again, it's like that dopamine hit. And like we're so proud of ourselves for doing that. Like give ourselves the atta girls and give it to us a lot.
Yes. And I felt a huge shift in my life and felt like I really started making progress when I went with the consistency in small increments over time and let it build. And I know sometimes that just feels like it's too simple really to be
Yeah.
effective, and yet it is super effective. And the celebration. I mean, I giggle sometimes at some of the things that I'm like, way to go, girl.
But we have normalized it has to be big, it has to be so big versus like why don't we normalize, yes, all the little things. I took out the trash, I took out, like I got up today, I made my bed, I brushed my teeth, I didn't get upset when my kid said something, or I pondered it before I responded. Like all those little moments add up, and it is a self concept and it is a new way of being, and that's really what we want to move into.
Yeah, I think, we have become a society that we really only celebrate the super big things.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of us, we want credit for all the little things that we do on a day-to-day basis. And if no one else is going to give us that credit, we have permission to give ourselves all the credit in the world for all of those little things that we are doing for ourselves and for others every single day.
100%.
So, shifting specifically to money, if someone wanted to really start exploring their money story and how they got to the beliefs that they have and the approach that they have to money, what are some questions or possibly some journal prompts that could help the listener start reflecting and really kind of getting to the root of how she got to the beliefs that she has about money?
I think there's two parts to this. I think it's important to kind of see where we got to. I think sometimes if you aren't aware, you can go down this rabbit hole and stay there versus what do I want? So sometimes I like, and you're going to have to play with this, each of, everybody listening, play with this. But I would start with like, what would I love? What would I love to have in my life? And it's in those things of writing those things down, like even just starting there. If you like don't even want to write down how much money you actually want to make, or what kind of house or next house or vacations you want to, like then I would start exploring those beliefs. Like, what am I embarrassed about that I don't even want to put that down? Or do I believe that it won't happen? Or, just those are beliefs that we've picked up along the way. And if you want to explore, like past, like what was I taught? Like, what are some of the things? Like, do I use the word expensive? Do I use the word can't afford? Like, do I use limiting language? And in it, here you go back to how we do one thing is how we do everything. So if you are using limited language with money, you're probably using limited language in other areas of your life too. So notice where you're using should, have to, ought to, must, can't, all of those heady versus heart, right? Heart is like would love, that feels fun, that feels exciting. So just start to explore what was kind of your experience with money growing up. How do your parents, maybe it could be even like, how do your parents currently talk? Like my parents are visiting and I just have just in my mind, not telling my mom this, but I'm just watching my mom so many times say, this is so expensive. This is so expensive. And that was a theme that we, grew up around. And so just recognizing language that you use, how you feel, when you see someone else with maybe things that you desire. What are you feeling? What are you feeling in your body? What are you thinking? I think sometimes it's easy to judge. And when we're judging, more often than not, that is a very great opportunity to get curious. And is it because I want that or because I've taught that's not okay to have? And so it's really starting to explore like, what would I love? What would I love for my life to look like? And I mean, I had to start with, I just want to be able to like take a lunch and walk around the block on my lunch hour. Like that's where I started, so I didn't start with like, oh, we're going to like, travel the world and do all. No, I was just like, wouldn't it be nice? At first, it was very like resentment filled. Wouldn't it be nice that I could actually eat my lunch and not have employees call me and I could walk around the block during the daytime? That's where I started. So here you go back to that 1%. So just recognizing where is your 1% of what would you love and seeing what are the thoughts and the beliefs that come up of why you think you can't have that.
It is so good. It was a couple years ago, I was working with my coach, and we did an activity where we just allowed ourselves to dream and no limits, no judgment. Just if you could have your utopian life,
Mm-hmm.
what would
Mm-hmm.
that look like from all different areas? And I struggled so much because the judgment kept coming up. Everything I put on the list, there was some limiting thought to why I couldn't have that, shouldn't have that. If for some reason I did get it, for whatever reason, I had this belief that it was going to change who I am as a person. I mean, it was a fascinating exercise.
Yeah. And I think also going back to slowing down is allowing yourself to here you go back to self-trust. Like these are activities that we can do with ourselves that we can be and learn and be more introspective and figure out ourselves at a deeper level. And so allowing ourselves, like we're worthy of having 10 to 15 minutes every single day, whenever it is for you, to sit down and just like notice, what am I thinking and what do I want? And, am I cultivating beliefs that are allowing me to have that, or am I cultivating beliefs that are not?
Our conversation today has been like very much a highly sensitive woman, right? Like talking about how we feel and how we believe and all of those types of things. Are there any more heady, tangible things that you feel like might be beneficial for the listener, or is really as you explore the more emotional and the belief side of things, does the tangible stuff kind of work itself out?
Yeah. I talk a lot about on my podcast, like I don't know if someone else created it, but it came through like 3D and 5D. And when I mean 3D, I mean the heady, the observed world, this microphone, you sitting across from me in the Zoom room, my clock on my desk. Like, what are we seeing with and they say it's not even 5 senses anymore. It's like 30 something. It could probably be more than that senses, right? But like, what are we experiencing? Our bank account, all of these things. But the 5D is the imagination, is the sensing, is the feeling, is the visualization. And it is in that actually where we need to live more of, which going back to what, I don't know if this was before we were talking about, before you hit record or at the very beginning, but like we have, our parents taught us like, come back to reality. That's not like stop dreaming, like because they had to stop dreaming. But what I have recognized, the more that I live in my imagination, the more that I live in the feeling of having, then my 3D world catches up. And I think that we want strategy the mind, the ego wants strategy. But here you go back to, you don't know how and you don't know when. Those aren't our jobs. But our job is to pay attention to our mind, to live from that place that we want to have and be, while letting go of, right? Because we are all like, everything that we have ever wanted has already been created, but it is in this 5D, experience. And so in order to bring that into what our eyes can see, we have to, it all comes back to feeling. And the world has taught us we need strategy and we need this, but you don't get to strategy from the same mind, right? Like that's not how that works. When you're thinking from higher places, higher dimensions, you're able to access, or you receive, I should say, downloads of like actually some ideas. And then that's when you take the then that's when you act on it, take the strategy. But where you are thinking from where you are and trying to do strategy is going to create more of the same. You have to be thinking and feeling from the place where you want to be.
So, what I heard you say is that as highly sensitive women, we need to tap into more of who we are. And it is in that acceptance and tapping into that we will actually have more of what we want versus trying to force ourselves to be the way that maybe other people are. And certainly the messaging that we have been getting, that you have to use your brain and intellectually you have to do these steps, but really honoring what it is that we as highly sensitive women bring to the table is, I'm gonna dare I say, more valuable.
100%. I'm like, I'll be the first to be like, we have it. I don't want it, when I say we have it figured out, I don't mean like we have it all figured out, but like we're on the correct path, right? Here you go back to the 3D world. I think it's slowly catching up, because you can see how like language is changing. Even when I've been talking to different, like when I say the 3D advisors, like attorneys and bookkeepers and CPAs, like their language has been changing. So I see it's coming. But we are definitely pioneers on the forefront. Like we are on the correct path. And I think we need to self-validate first, and we need to be surrounded with other women that are on this same frequency and page, because then I think sometimes we do need a little external validation to then sink into like, no, I am on the correct path. Like the reason why it feels off in your body is because it's not actually the best thing for you. Like I was forcing myself when I first started my business, before I took time off, I was forcing myself to do things a certain way because everyone else was. And I was like, hang on a second. I've not really ever really followed the crowd. Why am I doing this with business? Well, business and money has kind of been my Tinder sensitive, traumatic parts, right? And so I was, oh, these people know more than me. And it's like the reason why it feels off is because it wasn't correct for me. And so how many of us have been taught you need to be in your head, you need to think about it, pros and cons. Like there's been so many times in my life that I've made financial decisions, even before really sinking into my intuition, where I made it intuitively and it worked out so much better than my whole Excel spreadsheet and pros and cons list. Like it, what? And so really, I think the word that comes to mind is like coming home, like sinking into these feelings that we're feeling. That is really what is going to allow you to live the life that you want and have more. When I say freedom, peaceful, like what you said, at ease, peaceful, less friction. And the world just hasn't caught up to the 5D yet. Like that's really my belief.
But they're coming. And it is
They are.
because of conversations like this.
Yes. Yes. They have not caught up yet. They are definitely coming. And I think this goes back to more women need to be an example so that we can show other women and our children or our spouses or our circle of friends or whomever that this is the way, right? And And also, when more women have more money from alignment, from fun and joy, we empower and also give permission to other women to be able to have that as well. And I think that that is like one of my biggest, what do you want to call it, missions of like, no, more women need to have more money, because yes, everyone is, our hearts are, good. But let's just say that some of us have not always chosen that path. But the highly sensitive women, like, our hearts are pure. We want that. We want to circulate our money in ways that help ourselves, our family, our community, all of it. And so when we do that, when we act from that place, we are able to help other women see like just more evidence.
Yeah, just more evidence. And every day we're finding more and more of it. And this conversation is definitely a piece of evidence. And so I'm so, so grateful that you took the time to join us and to share all of your wisdom with the listeners. If someone wanted to know more about you and the work that you were doing, where can they find you?
Just go listen to my podcast. That's probably the easiest. And then I've got my website on there. But you're already a podcast listener, come on, hang out with me, listen to some episodes and see the way that I think and changing and shifting your mindset.
Erin, it is always a pleasure. I love every time that we get to connect and love that we live in a world in 2025 that technology can bring us together, because our paths would not have crossed otherwise. And you are just a treasure. And I'm so, so grateful that I get to call you my friend.
Oh, I feel the same way. Thank you so much.
If this conversation resonated with you, especially if you're feeling called to build more self-trust, ease, and assurance in your life, I invite you to explore working together more closely. I'm currently offering 4 free sessions to 7 new clients, and it's a wonderful opportunity to slow down, be supported, and begin honoring what you truly need. You can learn more or reach out directly by sending a message to info@alyssa.coach. Until next time, take care. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds and share it with a friend who may be feeling like she's broken too? I'd love it if you'd leave a quick review for the show on Apple Podcasts. It brings me so much joy to know this podcast is helping you. Now it's time for me to stop talking and go soothe my senses in nature. I'll meet you back here next week for another episode. Take care.